We're back at the IoT Community's IoT Slam on the beautiful SAS Institute headquarters campus. And I'm very lucky to welcome back Guy Merritt from SoftServe, who hopefully some of you have seen the video from last year. Dropped a lot of insight, and he's back to do it again. Guy,
well, thank you so much. Great to be here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So we were chatting a little bit. I know you have a number of presentations today and conversations about the big differences you've uncovered between 2022 and 2023. Would you like to share some of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of change has happened, which is good. Not all change is good, but in this case, I think it is.
Right.
Most recently, we've completed. We always have our beliefs, things that we think the way they are. We all have an opinion.
Yes.
And so what we said, you know what, we got a lot of opinions. We need to quantify some of this more. So what we launched several months ago was this global survey of 400 manufacturers around the world. Some very small, very large, and it gave us just tremendous insights. And a lot of our assumptions that we've been operating on were validated. Some of our assumptions were invalidated. And we've looked at that and we said, hey, we may have to pivot. So what do we see changing? What's changed within the last year? Well, the one item that has significantly changed is the need or the desire, and I'm going to speak more in the terms of manufacturing, how industrial IoT is in a manufacturing setting. So if you think about the manufacturing world, what has changed is we're seeing a lot of the factories now have fully embraced bringing in the cloud.
Okay.
So we've talked for years about it,
Yes.
but the reality was only the bigger, more mature companies. And so what we see is the cloud reaching down into the significantly smaller manufacturers.
Right.
And they're looking at that to say, hey, this is going to put me on equal footing with some of the bigger tier players and really help their competitive advantage. We've definitely seen that acceleration, and our data bore that out. The number one priority that we see on a global basis is upgrading all your factories, all the equipment, so it can interface to the IT equipment and ultimately get to the cloud. But unfortunately, we saw some downsides of that. Downsides were that the lowest item on the priority list in the surveys was OT cybersecurity.
That's surprising.
It was shocking. And we're like, well, wait a minute. We're going to now help connect the world's factories, and the people that are looking at it and are not thinking about security. And you start worrying about, well, wait a minute. What are we going to do when the new ransomware attack of the future actually turns inwards to a factory?
Right.
Locks up gateways, locks up a PLC. That can happen. So one of the items that we realized that we weren't aggressively educating on was OT security. So we think about that OT layer, and that we really need to focus on a better way and really as a methodology of how to get from point A to point B being your cloud connectivity.
So just for people who may be watching, could you just give a very simple actual definition of OT? Because I think a lot of people think of it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so, and that's a great question. And that when we think about technology, we're all very familiar with the acronym IT, information technology. But when we say OT, which is, you're right, that seems newer to people, to a lot of different people. And that's the operational technologies. And the operational technologies are those pieces, if you think about a factory, it's literally the machines producing your widgets.
Okay.
That is our OT. Now that equipment is controlled by other types of equipment, things such as programmable logic controllers. You hear us talk about PLCs. And that's a very common piece of equipment, and that's driven by something called a SCADA. And SCADA is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Systems. That controls the machines. And those have all been run locally. Well, now with Industry 4.0 introducing the cloud, now we're going to connect that. And so when we think about, well, how do I start connecting the cloud? What does that mean? Well, we used to use the term digital transformations. And what we found, digital transformations resonated more strongly with the people in the enterprise who are used to more of an IT-centric domain. Well, with what we're doing in manufacturing, with IoT and Industry 4.0, you're refusing IT capabilities with OT capabilities. We call it IT-OT convergence.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that convergence really starts to come holistically together. In the old days, we would have air gaps. We would actually physically separate the two. Like when I started in manufacturing, the IT department didn't even have badge access to come into the factory because that's how strong the separations were.
Right.
Well, now we can't do that. Now we're not doing that. Now it's about going for this OT transformation. How do we start to systematically upgrade the physical infrastructure of the plants so we can gather the data holistically? And the way I talk about this OT transformation, it really is about moving from a world of data isolation to a world of data integration.
Yep.
Now, once I can take all the different types of machine data and data from the humans also and bring it up and use it in the cloud, now I can start getting at different types of insights. And I can look and see things that I never could do before. For instance, what we see another big change in the last year is the C-suite of many manufacturing companies now asking the question, hey, I want to see on my mobile device, they want to just call it their mobile device now, they want to scroll through all their factories and get real-time data for something like OEE, overall equipment effectiveness.
Yep.
That's all I want to do. Well, just getting that one little application to work, and you got 15 different plants, and none of them were ever connected to the cloud before.
Right.
We need to institute an OT transformation. So the big change that I see in this OT transformation, really over the last year, it used to be the middle management layer in the factories are the ones saying, I need this.
Right.
And they would go push it up. Now we're seeing people at the C-suite level recognizing it and now starting to drive it down.
Which also brings up the whole, it's not a transition of on-prem to cloud, it's actually on-prem and cloud. They're both, symbiotic.
That is such a powerful statement what you said, because even we will talk about a transition to the cloud, and it's not.
Right.
It's an integration or a fusion of the cloud into the factory, and there will things that will always stay on-prem. Let me give you an example. If I have an emergency shut-off switch on the line, the conveyor belt, and you want that to stop, would it make any sense to have the business logic in the cloud
Right.
where you may have a round-trip delay of 500 milliseconds?
Yep.
No, if it's life and death, latency matters.
Needs to stop at the moment.
It needs to stop now. And that's why your edge strategies, edge computing strategies, knowing
Right.
what data stays at the edge, what data goes to the cloud. I actually use two different terminologies. The data that must stay at the edge or on-prem, that's what I call my OT, real-time data.
Okay.
Like hitting that emergency stop switch.
Right.
That has to happen now. But then when we cross that boundary and we're taking data into the cloud, now I call that OT lagging data.
Right.
So it's not necessarily mission critical. It's not, and it's not low latency type applications. It's more of your historicals, and that I can get close to near time capabilities. But what you have to ensure in that symbiotic relationship, we also must have the factory exist if the symbiotic relationship gets severed.
Right.
We've got to be able to keep the factories running. If you transitioned everything to the cloud, every little network hiccup, if the cloud provider has a challenge, a problem,
Yep.
or there's a malware attack somewhere in the network, you cannot shut your factory down because you have to disconnect from the cloud.
This makes me completely think, what you're talking about on the industrial side, and for other people who may be listening, things like healthcare, IoT, and the importance of 5G, and again, that latency, avoiding those milliseconds that could be a life and death thing. But at the same time, it can't just all be IoT. That person who's doing whatever needs to be able to override any of the cloud-based or IoT-based things and say, guess what, this isn't working, we need to physically do something.
Yeah. No,
And it seems like you're doing that on a wide industrial scale.
we are, and playing along that theme about what else has changed, the other item that we have seen dramatically change is all things related to energy management and sustainability.
Yeah.
I've actually, it didn't catch us quite off guard, but I was probably shocked that as soon as I'm meeting with a client, if I bring up energy management, sustainability, it always, oh, tell me more. The geopolitical situations that we've wrestled with,
Yes.
that have impacted energy prices, coupled what everybody went through COVID, that has made just energy and sustainability at the forefront. So we actually have a tremendous amount of opportunities now working with clients where we used to think about production optimization. If we're going to use Industry 4.0, bring cloud capabilities to accelerate throughput on a manufacturing line, improve product quality, and give deeper insights. That's what we used to think. Probably a year ago, I was saying that.
Right.
Well, now layering on the energy management layer and a sustainability layer
Right.
has become integral to the production process. So we've actually helped certain clients, we've done models and analysis for them to say, hey, let's look at taking the waste, your biomass waste out of your food producing factory. And instead of just taking that to a landfill, why don't we have a biomass clean fuel burner
Right.
and use that to augment energy? Or
We essentially take waste and produce energy.
and we produce energy with
Yes.
it. So that is sustainability. Not energy management, but that's sustainability. Whereas energy management comes in to say, hey, this is where the cloud also comes in. Because I've collected all the data about how the machines are performing, I know when work is happening, I understand how much water is flowing through pipes and pumps. I understand that, and I being the AI and machine learning algorithms, I can turn down the power on these machines. I kind of relate it to energy management being a parent. When you're a parent and you got little kids at home and they leave the bedroom, and you're like, shut the light off, right? But if you think in factories,
Not little. My teens do that too.
they still do. But if you think about a factory at a mega scale does that,
Yes.
right? The shift goes home, but a lot of times the lights literally stay on. The
Right.
HVAC is still running.
Yep.
The machines, the air compressors are running full out. They don't need to.
Right.
So you start putting in energy management, and that energy management, that optimization to help reduce costs, we've had some dramatic cost savings for clients.
Well, that makes me think energy management or sustainability, either one. I think a lot of people hesitate because they initially think, oh, this is going to be a cost center, I don't want to spend more money. But if you do it the right way, it's a profit center. I've for years have said sustainability needs to be sustainable. If you can't keep it going because it costs too much, then that's going to be the first thing to be
Now-
wiped away.
So now let me editorialize just a bit, and I'll take advantage of this time. I make a big distinction between energy management and sustainability.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. So that biomass generator, or what we see at SAS, where they have the solar farm augmenting the power grid,
Yes.
that is sustainability. We're taking and we're augmenting it, and we're not creating necessarily more carbon, we're saving it.
Correct.
Sustainability, or that would be an example of sustainability, but energy management. Let's say I figure out for a global manufacturer to optimize their power consumption, and they're going to save now $1 billion a year. Was that a sustainable solution?
Got it.
No, because what are they going to do with that $1 billion?
Well, going to probably redeploy it in a much more effective way somewhere, or
They're going to build more factories.
build, again.
So
the
it's not
operational-
sustainability, right?
Right.
You didn't reduce the overall energy consumption.
Got it.
You're taking the savings, going to reinvest it. That's why we make a distinction between energy management and sustainability. Now nirvana happens. I confuse the two together.
Got it.
But you know, we have different types of solutions, different techniques in that. So you can see that from our perspective and what we see in the marketplace. Sustainability, energy management is another big change in the factor. The OT transformation strategies, that's what we really got to focus on. We're still wrestling with basic data, cleanliness and hygiene, if you will. And then the third system, or the fourth component of that, and we talked a little bit about this last year, but it really has got even more reinforced, the concept of the ecosystem. So, but what has changed in the ecosystem, not only has it got reinforced, I think last year when I was here and we're talking about it and how it's really powerful, IoT communities and the IoT slams really helped foster it. We would think about partnerships a year ago, it was just us and another company.
One-to-one.
One-to-one. Now it's more like a big prime contractor and subcontractors, or we'll come in with a teaming arrangement with 4 companies to do something. And that takes a lot more cooperation, but what we're finding, not everybody can do everything, and we're bringing best of breed together to work holistically for a solution for the betterment of the client.
Yep.
So that change has continued, and it keeps expanding and keep growing. So those are some of the areas that I've seen that in the last year that has dramatically changed, or not dramatically, but where we do see changes happening.
So this is remarkable because it really shows a shifting, not just change, but thinking. With that being said, let's pull out the everyday elephant in the room, AI.
Yeah.
So given these adjustments from the survey and the discussions with customers and others, is AI factoring into how you see addressing this need?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it kind of you got to do these foundational pieces and then you do AI?
Yeah, so first, AI is not new.
No.
My first AI engine I worked on was 1992.
Yep.
So you say, okay, well, what has changed? Because it is obviously in the hype cycle and we're seeing it. What has changed is the compute power the compute power that's now available. It's unprecedented.
Right.
The cloud has helped enable that. All of us have access to supercomputers now.
Yep.
That was the big change. The second big change, after 25 years of massive amounts of data from the internet, combined with compute power, now I can train AI in a way I never could do before. The data is significantly bigger.
Right.
What that evolved then into is generative AI. And generative AI is the thing that's really caught the attention.
Yes.
Because what it does, it gives the illusion, if you will, of interacting someone with an entity or a being. And so I can ask it direct questions using natural language, and I get an answer back in a language I understand, not a bunch of graphs and equations, but it gives me a language I can understand, and it can give me recommendations. And if you trained it on your private data set, which is some things that we are now working on for generative AI, I start to train it on my equipment, how my systems behave. Now when something goes wrong, technicians or the operator can now query and talk and get something that's usable, what we call now explainable AI. I understand, and we do it right. It'll say, hey, I notice there's an overtemp condition. And now the technician can ask, why do I have an overtemp condition over here? Well, you have an overtemp condition for this reason, this has happened, and oh, by the way, this is my recommendation, what you should do about it.
Yep.
And we decrease the time to make a decision and to take action. So for me, that's the breakthrough we've seen. We've kind of had this acceleration of AI because now we, once again, just re-emphasizing it, huge amount of data from the last 25 years, massive computing power to allows me then to actually train machines, and with just the ongoing advances in better algorithms, better natural language processing, and introducing explainable AI that we explain to people, so the average, you don't have to be a technical person to interact with it anymore.
It makes me think about, DOS computers, which I remember, and then suddenly there was a GUI that you can click on things and easily find, and then you suddenly had this, hey, plug the phone line in and you have access to the internet that now gives you information and capabilities and accessibility from everywhere. Your explanation made me kind of think that was the shift we're seeing in AI.
We have seen the shift, and once again, being on the more the editorial side, there are, the challenge with generative AI is that even though it has learned patterns in the data. I mean, when we think about machine learning sounds like some scary thing. I mean, look, at the end of the day, machine learning is just simply a fast way to discover data patterns at a much faster rate than a human ever could do it.
Right.
A human eventually can do it, but the machine learning algorithms just find those patterns faster.
Yep.
And that's really all it is. So, but generative AI changed the equation because it gives the appearance of brand new content, that it looks like it's creative.
Right.
And that this ability to take what I trained on and infer and to create something new, that's kind of earth-shaking for all of us.
But a lot of it is perception, because it's not technically creating, it's aggregating from sources it can touch.
And it only can create from things that it can derive from, right?
Yes.
It's always derivatives of something. I discovered
Exactly.
a pattern in a movie script. Write a movie script about XYZ. Okay, I know the pattern,
Yes.
and I understand natural language processing, and it looks great. But it is powerful, but what it teaches us, and the reason we should be concerned, if the data it uses is corrupted, and corrupted can mean many different things.
Yes.
It's got misinformation. It's got, heaven forbid, it has proprietary data from another company in that data set.
Yep. I mean, we saw that major telco phone manufacturer used ChatGPT, and they used things they weren't supposed to. And once it's in there, you can't take it out.
You can't take it out. And that's the thing. You can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Right.
So I think one of the things that we're being very careful for is private generative AI. And so what we're working on and what we're doing our core research on, we got a nice generative AI offering today, and we can help. We do a lot of work in the area now. But it's also trying to keep it ethical. And ethical has many different connotations. And the first step is just train it on your private data set. You bring stuff from the outside world, unless you know clearly the source, where it came from, I'm very leery of that.
And there's always making sure, with ethics, privacy, and everything else, algorithmic bias, that's just a natural phenomenon of human people creating something. Even if they're very centered on what they need, there's always going to be a leaning in one direction or another about some types of things.
Yeah, and it's even, you'll see that the data itself will drive the bias.
Yeah.
Right? And so machines that generate data, they could have a malfunction, and it generates a whole bunch of data, and now if you trained an AI on that, well, that must be normal. Well, no, that was corrupted. But it's not even just the humans, right? Our biases get into the data, but the machine itself could introduce a
Because the
type of
pattern
bias.
recognition and
The
then
way
it
that-
propagates as each iteration comes out.
Right, because remember, the AI has no emotional being.
Correct.
All
Yes.
it knows, I'm just discovering a pattern, and I know the pattern. You ask me a question, I'm going to give you something that looks that matches that pattern.
Right, the computer's not going to be like, oh, I remember watching that movie when I was 5,
Then people will say, well, I tried ChatGPT and it wouldn't let me do this. I go, no, that was a human put a filter in.
Exactly.
So don't think ChatGPT was that smart. It did not do that. It would have gave you an answer in the early forms.
You might not have liked it.
Might not have liked it. So we're trying to put the ethics into it, and that's going to be up for people who are much smarter than I to figure out what are the rules and ultimately the laws and regulations that make that technology so it does, we want it to do good, minimize the harm. And so, long-winded answer to it, but it is an exciting area. I mean, we just look at some of the breakthroughs we've already done for our clients, training systems on their private data. We've got some manufacturing plants that we've done work for that we can analyze the changes in the weather.
Okay.
And then we can analyze what the temperature inside the factories will be. And we know a cold front's coming, so we can gradually bring up the heat instead of slamming it like a human would do. And you can do, so the AI can do things gracefully at a way to keep the energy burn lower at a lower rate.
And that connects directly to the various IoT sensors that are reading things from different points to help it determine what needs to happen.
Well, we always come back to the OT equation, right? This OT layer at the heart of everything is still down at the OT side. We love the cloud,
Right.
but it's compute. But if without this, without that OT layer, that's where the data source is coming from. And that's still, like I said earlier, that's still our greatest challenge. I'll say this, 100% of the clients I work with, when they say, no, we have clean data, they're incorrect.
Well, because I'll say clean data is a very relative and subjective phrase.
And very, a very common thing, they'll say, look, no, we got really good data governance, and here's this data lake, we got 10 years of data, and it's like, okay, and we bring our data scientists in, we look at it, and it's like, well, guys, we're looking through the data, and I can see half the fields are gone. Oh, we did an upgrade of the system, and we didn't need those fields anymore. I go, that's why I'm saying your data's not clean.
Correct.
There's a change.
You've now altered the natural state of the data.
And you've altered it, and that alteration looks like a pattern,
Exactly.
right?
Which triggers something else to change.
Which could introduce a bias now,
Yep.
because of some pattern of fields changed. And to us, we would call that, that's corrupt data.
Right.
It's got to be clean all the way through, so we can try to get a consistent, reliable output of the AI in that. And even then, we still tweak, we still go through it, and there's still iterative works going on with it. But yes, long-winded answer to your question.
No,
Do you
it's
see
great.
AI ML as being really the one of the key linchpins? I would contend we're in a new hype cycle. It seems like about every 10 years we'll go into a new hype cycle around AI.
Yes.
When I started, like I was telling you back in '92, my first one, we called it an expert system in those days. And that was all the rage. Oh no, this artificial intelligence, expert systems, and then it died down. It's like, oh, this is really hard to maintain this, and then we have another spurt, and so we're in a bit of a hype cycle. And following the hype cycle, I'm hoping we'll get down in this trough again, then we can get back to making sure we put all the rules, the right ethical ways to do this, what are the right business use cases to pursue, and then we'll get back up on a curve that's adding bigger value. But all that being said, what we do see, if you do look at the data around hype cycles, each generation of new technologies we've introduced, that cycle of adoption keeps getting shorter and shorter and
Yes.
shorter and shorter.
I mean, it also touches, we're seeing other emerging tech, AR, VR, the spatial computing. People think, oh, this is just about, wearing something and being in this metaverse-like. No, it actually is very much touching on IoT, AI, and all the other elements, because it needs to work together.
100%.
And I think it touches on what you were saying. Just like partners have to be more than one coming together as an ecosystem, ideally the technology does that too.
Properly built, yes. I would concur with that. The other thing, I was listening to you, made me think about, we talk about AI, originally it was very cloud-centric because it took just so much compute power, but now we're pushing that AI all the way at the edge. And we have today in our proceedings, we see several people talking about AI at the edge.
Yes.
And getting in that local machines. And we do see, in the IoT specifically, I do anticipate a rise of more intelligence at the edge, more ability to operate autonomously. A good example of that would be like a drone.
Yep.
It can follow. In the past, you just put in a program set of GPS and it flew around. Well, now you can put AI in there, and it can make some decisions of what to do. I think it's an early example of putting more and more intelligence closer to the edge in an IoT-centric world, and then it just reports what it did. So that's going to be kind of exciting to see too, the rise of additional intelligence in the OT layer with that.
Well, I was going to say, you were bringing up the drone, but I could see factories completely doing that, where people always talk that innovation, AI, whatever technology you want to talk about, it takes the repetitive, time-consuming elements out of the equation so people could be more strategic. This may finally be happening.
I do. I wish I knew the numbers, but I know it only directionally. That if you look at the human or the operator to machine ratio, we see a dramatic shift. And I have been in some factories where very, very large manufacturing lines being operated by 9 people.
Wow.
And these were large, and it's the rise of the IoT, the cloud connectivity, putting what I call hyper automation. That's the fusion of making something smarter at the edge, working in collaboration with the cloud. Put in more and more of this hyper automation, and it changes, and that's being done, by the way, in response, because we still on a global basis have a big skilled labor challenge.
Yes.
in our factories, particularly in the United States. We have a lot of shortage of operators, but we're all very aware of the geopolitical instability that we have going on. We see a tremendous response of factories being built. I think right in the last check I looked in the CHIPS Act that was signed in September last year, we now got like 20 new semiconductor manufacturer plants being built in the United States.
Yep.
And so where are we going to get all the workers for that? Well, this is where IoT and hyper-automation now comes into play, and the quality of the equipment, the capabilities of the factory, we don't have to have as many people with that. Once again, that's where that AI ML comes into play.
Yep. Also,
and to augment that human to work. And by the way, just as I said that, it did make me think of another study we did a while back. We were having a debate. Can you get better results with the human or the robots? And it's always a classic argument. And we actually got shocked. You know what the answer turned out to be in our study?
equal?
No, neither. You get the best answer when the robot and the human collaborate. Hence, we now call it Cobots.
That's very interesting, because everybody brings up, oh, is AI going to take away jobs? Well, ideally, they work together, similar to the automobile, Oh, great, I don't have to make horseshoes for the horses anymore.
That's right.
Yes, but now you learn a new skill, and now you're working on engines of cars, you're working on different elements. It, done the right way, addressing the need you just brought up, you upskill and reskill, and that should have a swoop up for standard of living, all those different things. But I don't think the pressure has been there yet.
It's not. And look, there's two things I'm really just hoping for at the end of the day. The first one is I want my car to be fully autonomous, so I can go to sleep at night and send it out to work,
Right.
like doing Lyft or Uber by itself and earn a living. I would be very happy. And then my own personal robot that could go do this.
Yep. Go to the food store.
Go to the food store, take care of that for me. So if we get that, it'll be okay. But
Very funny. Well, innovation is going to keep happening. People are going to continue to be needed alongside it. They don't, it's not one or the other, it's both. So to conclude, what is exciting you most about what you've seen and heard at IoT Slam today?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many, this is one of the things I really, really enjoy about working at SoftServe. I just have the opportunity to be exposed to so many different types of industries and technologies. Sometimes I feel like a kid in a candy factory. There's just so much to see and do. What I like and what I'm most excited about, and this may surprise you, and we had one presentation that actually talked about it today. It's really the change management.
Gotcha.
And change management is not about the change of technology. When we talk about change management, it's the change in humans.
Yes.
Thing that I'm most excited about, and I think it really spurred me with what we saw about how fast you were talking about ChatGPT, how many users it got.
Right.
If we can get a positive human embracement of these newer technologies, then we can truly maybe realize the good that we've been trying to do. Because I remember back in the early 90s, I was very fortunate in my career to be at a company. We were literally building the early infrastructure for large-scale internet, putting in the long-haul transport networks and putting it all together. And we were so excited about, oh my gosh, you're going to know everything. You're going to have all this information. And I ended up getting very disappointed with what we did with it. So when I come to a conference like this and I see the goodness come back, so maybe that's what I'm probably most excited about, is if the human experience can be nicely blended with the technology for good. And we see a lot of that now. And some folks are even directly talking about that change management, and it's about us as people. That's what I'm probably most excited about.
I think that's right on par with what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. It's so encouraging. And I did notice something you said that made me laugh, because I guess it's the experiential career touching it. Normally people say, I felt like a kid in a candy store. You said, I feel like a kid in a candy factory. And I said, that is career generated relevance. But it's been a pleasure. Guy Merritt from SoftServe, can't thank you enough. And
my
looking
pleasure.
Forward to doing it again a year from now.
Absolutely. And this is such a great organization. We are so proud to be part of it. And I really, really appreciate the time to share my thoughts with you today.